Hello all, welcome to yet another live session of Narayana IAS Academy. So as you see, this is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis. So for today's discussion, we've actually picked up three important topics from the Indian Express, which are very important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. Now, these are the topics and now let us actually have a look at it. The first topic that we've actually picked up today has been from page number 12 of the Indian Express, that is unlocking the retail advantage. So here it actually talks about what is the retail economy and what is the current status of the retail sector in India. Also moving on, it actually talks about the logistics sector in India and also the concept of e-commerce sector in India respectively. So here what is important for us to understand is what is the meaning of retail, what do you mean by the e-commerce sector, and what is the performance of the logistics sector in India in order to contribute to the economic growth and development. So this is a main topic that we've actually picked up. Moving on, the second topic, as you can see, a rice variety to curb farm fires. So here we'll be comparing and contrasting two different rice varieties, that is Pusa 44 as well as Pusa 2090 variety. These numbers are actually given for identifying them, and we'll actually be looking at how this Pusa 2090 is actually supposed to be environmentally more sustainable than Pusa 44. So here we'll be discussing about what is this rice variety and how it has been environmentally sustainable as well as causing environmental challenges from stubble burning, increase in the health risk as well as air pollution. Okay. Now moving forward, the third article that we've actually picked up is from page number 11 of the Indian Express, how scientists use stem cells to reverse diabetes for the first time. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what is type 1 diabetes, okay? So for that, you need to know what are the different types of diabetes, that is type 1 diabetes, 2 diabetes, as well as gestational diabetes that usually occurs during pregnancy. And also, we will be discussing about the concept of what is stem cells, okay? How important or integral that the stem cells are a part of biotechnology and how these technology actually help in reversing any kind of autoimmune disease like type 1 diabetes. Okay, so these are the three topics that we've actually picked up for discussion today, and so let us actually get into the discussion quickly. Okay, so the first article that we'll be discussing about over here, so the first article that we'll be discussing over here is unlocking the retail advantage. Okay, so this particular article discusses about India's logistics sector. So what do you mean by logistics? It is nothing but when a particular product is actually manufactured, the entire process that is involved in order to bring that product to the destination and deliver it to the customer or the consumer. So this process is called as logistics. Okay, so whether the transportation involved in between or whether it is actually stored in the warehouse, where are the buffer stocks, etc., and the entire process or the phenomenon that actually deals with all of this is called as logistics. So only if there is a very strong hold of the logistics sector, and economy can actually perform well in retail as well as e-commerce. Here retail is nothing but it is a business where it brings the entire amount of goods to directly to the customer. Okay, so it is different from that of the wholesale. And also, what do you mean by e-commerce? Example is your e-commerce platform, okay, where a particular company registers with Amazon, Flipkart, etc., and through that they actually make a sale, okay, to the customer. So that is called as e-commerce. So it is actually said that both the e-commerce as well as the retail sector is actually going to grow exponentially in India, and for that what are all the strategies India actually has to adopt in order to strengthen its logistics sector is what we'll be discussing here. So our topics of discussion today will be India's logistics sector, the next one is retail as well as e-commerce sectors. So this particular topic is important from GS paper 3, infrastructure, supply chain management as well as industrial growth. Okay, so moving forward, let us actually see what is this particular article discussing about. So Before that, let us see, there has been a previous year question that has been asked in the year 2021 in the mains examination, where they had asked about investment in infrastructure and how essential it is for a rapid and inclusive economic growth. So these kind of economic parameters and dimensions are something that you need to understand from analytical perspective also for your mains examination. Now moving forward, let us understand what the article is talking about. So India is expected to become a powerhouse in both retail as well as e-commerce, with its logistics sector serving as the crucial backbone to unlock this particular potential. This is nothing but, it basically says that the retail sector and e-commerce in India is actually going to grow exponentially, and for this we need the powerhouse, which is nothing but, that is, we need the backbone, which is nothing but the logistics sector, to be very, very strong, for which the challenges that face the sector actually has to be addressed. So this is what the article is talking about. So now let us understand slowly the basics. What do you mean by retail sector? Okay, retail is nothing but, it is the sale of goods directly to the consumers, and this is contrasting to that of the wholesalers. Wholesalers is nothing but the total amount of goods is actually produced to the seller, and then through them it actually reaches the customer. So that is called as wholesaler. At a wholesale price it is sold, whereas it is when it is directly to the consumer, that is actually called as the retail sector. So retail, as you see here, is the sale of goods and services directly to the consumers, which is in contrast to that of wholesaling, which is nothing but the sale to business or institutional customers. So this we already saw the concept. Moving forward, if you see what is the contribution of retail sector to the GDP or the economic growth of India, if you see, the retail sector accounts for over 10% of the country's GDP and around 8% of the workforce. That actually sums up to be 35 and odd million. And also it is expected to create around 25 million new jobs by the year 2030. Also, India's retail market is projected to grow from around $820 billion to $2 trillion by 2033. So you might see that it is very verbose, but all these are very important. First, you need to know what retail sector is. Next, you need to know, how much does it actually contribute to India's GDP. Next, you need to know how much of employment it will actually generate. And also, who are the major players in the retail industry, you need to know. For example, you have Reliance Retail, you have the Future Group, D-Mart, Shoppers Stop, the Tata Groups, Walmart India. These are all the giant players in the retail sector. Now moving forward, let us actually look at the next dimension. So here, what are the key growth drivers that are actually involved in this retail sector is that the first one, India is actually the second largest population in the world, that we know, and with a rising middle income class of approximately 158 million households. This actually, this is characterized by increasing urbanization, and also the demographic dividend in India is more, that is youthful demographic, with rising disposable incomes. That is, here the demand is actually high all the time for goods and services, all contributing to increased consumer demand. So that is what they are saying. What actually drives the growth of the retail sector in India? This is actually the explanation. Okay. So here if you see, your D-Mart as well as Walmart, all these grocery stores that you actually go to get the goods directly, those are your retail shops. Now moving forward, what is e-commerce sector? So that is what I told you. There are two sectors which are actually going to grow exponentially, at a higher rate. One is actually the retail sector, where you saw what it is. Next is your e-commerce sector. E-commerce sector, for example, you can actually take, example of Amazon, Flipkart, etc. Because with the advent of internet and other things, this actually facilitates easier online transaction. It reduces the burden of actually going to the shop physically or in person. So what happens is that there is actually a boom in the e-commerce sector in India. So that is what this particular write-up is actually saying. It says the e-commerce sector refers to buying and selling of goods and services over the internet. This actually facilitates online transaction between the business as well as the consumer. So this is what it is, through a platform. Next, The Indian e-commerce market is expected to reach around 325 billion by 2030. And if you see, the major players here include the Amazon, Flipkart, Myntra, Meesho, etc., through which you actually, get your clothes and other things. Here the key drivers also, it actually includes, first one is the advent of internet. Then all of us actually have a smartphone, and we have the digital payments. You have the GPay, you have the UPI transactions, phone pay, Paytm, etc. And this actually has actually led to increased e-commerce and also changing consumer preferences. Okay, now moving forward, the internet penetration rate, that is how much internet has penetrated in India, rose over by 52% in the year 2024 itself. And earlier, if you see, a decade back in 2014, it was around only 14%. So these points become very, very important, because you can state that always in your mains examination, which means now that more than half of the country's population has access to internet. So ultimately what happens, the demand also increases. There is increased urbanization, again lifestyle changes, standard of living, quality of life, everything has actually risen. So ultimately demand has actually increased, to match which the supply has also has to increase. So this is why what happens, the retail as well as the e-commerce sector has been actually growing. Okay, so this is what you need to know about here. And now moving forward, let us see, in 2023, the penetration rate of smartphones in India, if you actually see, it reached around 71% and was estimated to reach around 96%. It is estimated that around 96% there will be penetration of smartphones in India by 2040. And also India recorded around 117.6 billion UPI transaction, I told you, right, online transactions in the year 2023. Now moving forward, here comes the important part, discussing about logistics sector. What do you mean by logistic? That is what I told you. When a product or a good is actually manufactured, what are all the processes it actually goes through, like transportation, being held in the buffer stock or in the warehouse until it actually reaches the destination or the consumer. Everything that is actually involved, okay, or everything that is involved in this supply chain operations, that is actually called as the logistics sector. So now let us actually quickly understand what it is, what is written here. It is nothing but this sector encompasses the management and the movement of goods. This actually includes what? The transportation, the warehousing, as well as the supply chain operations. And it serves as the backbone for retail and e-commerce by ensuring efficient product delivery, inventory management, and order fulfillment directly in that impacts the customer satisfaction. That is, when all this is done properly from the manufacturer by reaching the destination, then what happens, it will enhance the customer satisfaction and also the operational cost for the business. Next, if you move, the Indian logistics sector is valued at 150 billion. So these are all small points that you need to jot down in order to make your answer, and to prove that you are well read and you're prepared for writing this particular answer. So this contributes to around 14.4% of the India's GDP, and how much of employment it generates is very important. Around 22 million people are actually being employed in this particular logistics sector. Now moving forward, this is the logistics sector. Okay, so what is the amount of transportation that is actually involved? What is the packaging which is actually involved? Whether any kind of robots are used or not, whether trucks are used, whether tankers, and what is the control, the shipping operations that take place, whether it is stored in the warehouse, the loader, the transportation here, the packaging, the robot, whether it comes on plane, whether how it is delivered, all these things are actually part of the logistics sector. Okay, now moving forward, let us actually understand what are the major challenges facing India's logistics sector, and only if these challenges are addressed, we can be very sure that the other two sectors of retail as well as the e-commerce will actually exponentially grow. Okay, so here now let us understand first issue that actually faces the logistics sector is the high logistic cost. Okay, so India's logistic cost account for around 11 to 14% of GDP, which is highly concerning. So this is actually higher than the global average, which is only around 8 to 10%. So this actually makes goods more expensive and it reduces the competitiveness. Okay, so nobody will actually choose to buy. So this is what it is saying. If the logistic cost is actually high, that is the the what to say, the price of technology which is involved, or the transportation cost that is involved, if it is high, all these things ultimately that actually reflects in the price of the goods, right? So no, the demand will also reduce, and so what happens is that the goods will become more expensive. Next one is the infrastructure dependency, that is there is over dependence on road transportation. Okay, because if you see for example, the if you see with respect to that of the ships that actually carry the goods, etc., that is called as the turnaround time. Turnaround time is nothing but the ship actually carries the goods, it comes to the ports, unloads it and goes back. So the time period in which this process is done is called as the turnaround time. In India, unfortunately, the turnaround time is higher. So what they feel is that for proper transportation to actually happen, for efficiently or rapid transportation to happen, there is over dependence on the road transportation. That is what nearly 60% of the cargo is transported by road and 32% is done by rail, primarily due to saturated rail networks and high rail tariffs. They are actually saying the cost is very high. Next is poor material handling infrastructure. So always if we see any section or any segment you take, infrastructure in India is actually insufficiently developed. And the underdeveloped material handling infrastructure, this leads to the accumulation of stocks, that is inventory, reduced manufacturing efficiency and also higher distribution as well as transportation cost. Next one, there is fragmented warehousing. Here, the domestic warehousing sector is highly fragmented because you can see most of the warehouses, it actually measures less than 10,000 square feet, which actually hinders the realization of economies of scale. So again, there is a problem with that, with respect to that of warehousing. Now moving forward, what are the other issues that actually follow? As I told you, the first one is high turnaround time for the ships that we mentioned, right? So here, the average turnaround time for the ships at the major ports in India, because there are two types of port, right? Major as well as minor. So here at the major ports of India, it is approximately 2.2 days, which is compared to that of the global average. So global average is around 0.9. Whereas if you see in India, it is actually 2.2, which is very, very high according to UNCTAD. Now moving on, there is lack of formalization in the sector. Okay, so you actually see that the logistic industry in India is highly fragmented because there are, a large number of unorganized players over here, and only 10 to 15% of the sector is owned by organized players. Now moving forward, the adoption of technology like artificial intelligence, like Internet of Things, etc., and other automation in warehousing and transport system, this actually remains a hurdle again. Next one, there are of course regulatory hurdles. Okay, so there are actually frequent changes in policies. There are different regulatory frameworks. There is no one size fits all, and also there is lack of standardization of the policies across different states. This actually creates additional administrative burden, slowing down the movement of goods. So these are all the remaining what to say challenges that actually face the logistics sector. And the final one is absence of skilled labor. Of course, even though the demography of India, the demographic dividend is actually high, and the employment that each sector actually has to create in the economy to meet the population is actually high. Though all these things are high, the amount or the rate of skilled labor in India still continues to be very, very skewed, or you can say minuscule. So there is lack of adequate training institutions that has led to a shortfall in skilled management as well as client service. So ultimately, when there is no skill, ultimately it actually affects the entire sector, and there are no client service personnel, and the skill gap actually is enormous, especially in the warehousing sector, in the areas of truck driving, as well as there are limited ground staff which are there, and this is all impacting the productivity and global competitiveness of this entire sector. Now, how do you actually balance and keep this very, very neutral while completing the answer? Is that you always need to suggest a way forward, okay? And your way forward has to be rational enough. You should not be inclined towards the right or the left. It has to be very neutral so that you please the examiner. Here This is how you actually make it more appealing. First one, you need to try to reduce the logistic cost. We saw, right, the kind of technology, the transportation, the warehouses which is fragmented, all this actually has to be taken care of. So first, you need to reduce the logistic cost, and you need to make sure that it is profitable for the retailers and making the products more affordable for the consumers. Okay. Next one, there has to be skill development. We actually saw. So all the educational institutions have to train their wards, to be skilled enough. Next one, you need to invest in technology. Okay, so you need to leverage technologies like Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and so on for real-time tracking and efficient warehousing. This can improve the sector's efficiency. Moving on, Unified Logistics Interface Platform, that is ULIP. So you need to develop a platform in order to integrate all the logistics stakeholders so that there is better coordination, there is better information sharing, there is better awareness as well as collaboration. And finally, integrated end-to-end logistics. This is nothing but in order to just ensure that there is seamless flow of cargo across the value chain. So this has to be ensured. So it actually in turn reduces the cost and the time of the movement. Okay. So overall, this is what we have actually read about the logistics sector. So here again, if we actually have to sum it up, I would tell that yeah, to sum it up, any kind of sector, if you actually take anything, even with respect to that of agriculture sector, or if you take manufacturing into consideration, or if you take services into consideration, what we need to know is there are certain things that you need to jot down with respect to any sector when you come across the newspaper as well. First, you need to know what the sector is about. For example, if we spoke about retail sector, you need to know that it directly caters to the needs of the consumers. In case of e-commerce, you need to know it actually plays as a platform in between the business as well as the consumer. Then again, what is logistics? The entire process like transportation, etc. From the time of manufacturing to it actually reaches the destination. So that is called as the logistics sector. You need to know what the sector is. Second one, you need to know what are the examples of each sector. Next, you have to know what is the contribution of the sector to India's economic growth or GDP. Next, you need to know what is the amount of employment currently it actually caters to and what is the potential of employment creation in the future. Next one, you need to know because of this, what are the advantages of this particular sector, or you can talk about the significance. Next, moving on, you need to know what are all the concerns or the challenges this particular sector faces, because of which other sectors in India are also affected. For example, if logistics actually does not have a stronghold, then retail and e-commerce are being affected, right? So that kind of integrated analysis you need to do for your preparation. And finally, in order to address this, what are all few of the government initiatives? And moving on, despite these government initiatives, what is the way forward and what can be the better strategies that India can adopt? So what are the strategies or way forward that India can adopt? And in case if there are any international examples or global examples, we can actually cite them and conclude the answer. So these are the 9 parameters around which we need to make our preparation holistic with respect to any topic. Take it women empowerment, take it children, whether take it poverty, malnutrition, unemployment, anything has to be around these 9 to 10 parameters. And also in case of poverty or other things, what is the kind of SDG that it actually caters to? So this is how this topic becomes important for discussion. So having discussed enough on this particular topic, now let us actually move to our next interesting topic that we actually picked up today. So the next topic that we'll be discussing here is, I'm sorry for the, yeah. So the next topic that we'll be discussing about here is a rice variety to curb farm fires. Okay. So off late, as such, pollution becomes very, very important for your examination. So even when you're reading the newspapers, you need to first have a detailed or a thorough hang of the syllabus, okay? So in syllabus, do you have pollution, or it is actually given in the name of biodegradation or conservation, okay? So this particular topic becomes important, that is pollution, different types of pollution, air pollution, water pollution, river pollution, etc. So this topic is important. So when it actually talks about a rice variety to calm farm fires, so what do you mean by farm fires? There are actually, it ultimately results in what? Pollution, that is air pollution. So they are actually talking about a rice variety that could actually stop, or it could actually prevent these farm fires, okay? So here there are number of related things that become important. First thing, the cropping pattern. The crops and cropping pattern of India becomes important, first thing, okay? Next one, crop diversification becomes important. This is all mentioned in your syllabus. Then you have environmental degradation. That again becomes important for your examination. That is environmental pollution and degradation. Finally, conservation becomes important. So with respect to this, all these topics you actually need to know. So here we'll be talking about two rice varieties, where the current one is nothing but Pusa 44, that is actually being cultivated or grown by the farmers, and how it actually leads to, or what are the kind of environmental challenge it actually poses, due to which Pusa 2090, that is 2090, is preferred, and it is actually said to be environmentally sustainable, compared to that of the former, is what we are going to discuss about. And in this discussion itself, we'll be talking about other important things, that is, we'll make passing references, and what is your takeaway from this discussion will be to read in detail about the topics that I make passing references, okay? The most important thing I'll discuss in detail, particularly what the news caters to. The other things which I tell you is your takeaway, where you need to make notes of them and be prepared. So in this particular topic, Pusa 44 rice variety will be spoken of, 2090 variety will be spoken of, and this issue of stubble burning is what you need to actually prepare, because it's a very important topic, and it is a static one also. And also this particular topic becomes important for your general issues on climate change. And for the mains examination, you need major crops, cropping patterns in various parts of the country, conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, okay? So this is important for discussion for our examination. Now moving forward, there has been a previous year question with respect to that of, among the following, which actually is the largest exporter of rice in the world, whether it's China, India, Myanmar and Vietnam. Very important. Most of us would not have thought about India itself over here. We would have thought about China. So here it is important that you actually have your PYQs while dealing with one particular topic. So this was a question asked in the 2018 prelims examination. Now let us see, what is this particular article talking about. So this particular article, it actually focuses on the introduction of Pusa 2090 rice variety. I already told you, as against Pusa 44 variety. Why? In the context of addressing the environmental issues which is associated with stubble burning in India. Stubble burning has actually, it is posing a lot of health risk, as well as the menace of air pollution across the regions of Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, etc. Okay, because of late we've been hearing a lot of CAQM, air quality index deteriorating, air quality, lung diseases associated, etc. So here they are saying, in what way 2090 rice variety is actually better than that of 44. So this is what we'll actually be discussing here. So moving forward, yeah. So first of all, we'll understand about the Pusa 44 that has actually been in cultivation. See, it was actually released in the year 1993, and since then this has actually been, a popular choice among the farmers. You need to know which is the organization that developed it. It is Indian Agricultural Research Institute, that is IARI. Okay. So here, since 1993, since its introduction by the IARI, this particular rice variety has been highly in demand, and it has actually been the, go-to rice variety. Next one, the yield statistics. If you see how much it actually yields, is that per acre this Pusa 44 has the capacity of yielding about 35 to 36 quintals of grain per acre. Okay, and in some cases it can go up to 40 quintals also. So this actually makes it very favorable for the farmers as well as economical also in the region of Punjab. Next, if you see profitability, this actually yields a profit of around 8,920 to 11,600 per acre. And this actually makes this most economically viable option, particularly compared to that of the other rice variety, that is PR 126. Okay. So now moving forward, let us see, this is actually the Pusa variety, that is Pusa 44 that we are actually speaking about. Now moving forward, we will actually see what are all the concerns. Okay, so though this particular rice variety is economical, it is highly profitable, it actually has certain concerns such as extending growing period. It actually has the environmental costs. There are a lot of health risks associated, the higher amount of water consumption during irrigation. Despite government efforts, we are not able to curb it. Why is what we'll actually have to see here. So extended growing period, here I'll make it very simple. If you see this Pusa 44, this actually takes around 155 to 160 days. That is the seed to grain period. That is nothing but the amount of time this particular rice variety takes to mature is around 155 to 160. Okay. So what happens is that since it is actually a longer duration of time, there is a lot of time crunch on the farmers because they need to clear up their fields for sowing of wheat and cultivation and get it ready for the winter season, right? So what happens is that since this is actually hampering it, it is actually causing 1 minute. Since this period actually causes a lot of crunch, what happens is that the farmers actually resort to stubble burning in order to clear their fields. Okay, so that is why stubble burning, then environmental pollution, global warming, so on continues. Okay, so here Pusa 44, this actually takes 155 to 160 days, and this is a time of maturity. This is 30 to 35 days longer than the other varieties, and hence it actually leads to stubble burning. So due to stubble burning, it actually spreads to the neighboring regions, and hence it actually has health concern, and also farmer dependence is there. Despite having this environmental cost, the farmers continue to grow because of their higher yield, and in 2022 if you see, it covered 15.4% of Punjab's non-basmati rice acreage, although its share has been declining gradually as PR 126 gains popularity. Next, what happened? Government of Punjab has actually banned it, but then what happens? Due to the lack of alternatives, they still resort to growing this particular variety of rice. Now moving forward, Pusa 2090, which is actually seen as a viable alternative. The same organization, that is Agricultural Research Institute, has developed this new variety as a direct replacement to the other variety, that is this Pusa 44, and it actually, it actually grows in a very short span. That is, the amount of time that is taken is only 120 to 125 days, that is 30 days lesser than that of the previous variety. Also similar yield, this Pusa 290's grain yield, it actually gives around 34 to 35 quintals per acre, is almost comparable to 44, while still it actually offers other benefits like higher head rice recovery, that is 68 to 70%, and mild aromatic grains. And also this particular Pusa 2090 is actually highly lodging resistant. What do you mean by lodging? Lodging is actually the bending down of the crop like this due to any kind of wind or rain or during adverse climatic conditions, where you actually see this particular Pusa 2090 is lodging resistant also. Okay, so it actually acts as a robust option during grain filling as well as ripening stages. So this is actually Pusa 2090, where you see comparatively it is lodging resistant also, while at the same time it produces almost the same kind of results. What are the other benefits that this particular rice variety gives is that, first one, saving of water. Okay, so since it actually matures 35 days earlier with what to say, with the higher yields also and profitability also, it has significant water savings requiring around 5 to 6 fewer irrigation. So water scarcity is actually being prevented. So prevention of water scarcity is there. Next one, sustainability also, because here they actually do not first thing is that the farmers don't go for stubble burning because they have ample time for their wheat, as well as there is sufficient groundwater left even after irrigation. So this is the next point that we'll have to know about the sustainability or the benefit options. Okay, so this is the rice variety. One more important thing that we actually have to remember is to know the different types of crops, that is the kharif crops, the rabi crops, the zaid crops, what are the periods in which they grow, and also we need to see what are the regions, what are the different types of crops that are grown in northern India during these seasons as well as southern India during these seasons, because questions can actually come. And also what are the essential conditions, what should be the temperature, what should be the inclination of slopes, what can be the soil types, the water absorption, all these become very, very important for your prelims examination. So now moving forward, let us move to our last article that we'll be discussing how scientists used stem cells to reverse diabetes for the first time. Okay, so here we need to know about different things. First, we'll be discussing about what is diabetes. Next, what are the types of diabetes. Next, what are the stem cells, why are they used and how significant are they in the field of biotechnology, and how these technology help in reversing a particular disease. So all these things you need to know. So what we'll be discussing here is we'll also be discussing about a concept of autoimmune disease. What is that autoimmune disease? So autoimmune disorder will be discussed here. Type 1 diabetes, stem cell therapy, gene programming, all these will be discussed here. Next, this particular topic becomes important for your prelims, that is science, as well as for the mains examination under GS paper 2. Awareness in the fields of IT, space, computers, robotics is GS paper 3, robotics, nanotechnology, as well as biotechnology. Okay. So moving forward, let us actually further understand what this particular topic is discussing, and let's see a previous year question. So in 2012, there was a direct question with respect to the stem cells, frequently seen in the news. What are the following characteristics about it? So hence this particular topic becomes very important for our discussion. So moving forward, let us actually see what the researchers have actually done. Also understanding what the research is about, and apart from that, understanding the concepts that they actually used becomes very important, because basically for some of us, science does not become, a stronghold, but however, we need to be a generalist in order to appear for the UPSC and not a specialist. Okay. So here, scientists, what they have done is they have successfully used reprogrammed stem cells to help a type 1 diabetes patient produce insulin naturally. So I will explain this line. So in this one line, we'll understand this entire article. Okay. So here, a person was actually suffering. Person X was suffering from diabetes type 1. So what do you mean by diabetes type 1? It is an autoimmune disease. Okay. It differs from that of diabetes type 2. Diabetes type 1, why do I call this autoimmune disease? Is that autoimmune disease are the condition where your immune system attacks the healthy cells by mistake. So that is called as autoimmune disease. So there is loss of immunity, there is loss of proper functioning. So in case of diabetes 1, what is important here is that in order to control your blood sugar level in your body, this particular substance called insulin is very, very important. Okay. But what happens when a person is characterized by diabetes 1, this production of insulin for that blood glucose level regulation is not produced sufficiently. Why? Because your immune system automatically by mistake affects, or it actually kills the healthy cells. This is called as diabetes 1. It differs from diabetes 2 because diabetes 2 comes with respect to your lifestyle changes like obesity, at the age of 40 due to the kind of food you take, excess, sugar levels, etc. But then again, it is produced by this improper or insufficient release of insulin. Okay. Where is this insulin produced? In the pancreas. What is pancreas? It is an organ located behind and lower than the stomach. Okay. So this actually has a group of cells over there which are called as the beta cells, which are responsible for production of this particular insulin. So what is it is, a person who was having diabetes 1, where it was an autoimmune disease where insulin was actually not produced because the immune system attacked the healthy cells, by mistake. So here what happens, in order to enable the, instead of using the immunosuppressants, okay, that is the medicines that is actually given and all those things, the researchers have found an alternative way that they try to bring the natural production of insulin in this particular person. How did they do that? They used stem cells. What are stem cells? They are unique group of cells that can be made into any other kind of cells. Okay. For example, there are two kinds of stem cells. One is the pluripotent stem cell. This is nothing but these cells can become any other type of cells. For example, they can be, converted or reprogrammed or modified into the kidney cells or the brain cells, and thereby they can be used for, replacing the damaged cells of your brain or the kidney or your heart, etc. The next one is a multipotent stem cells. What are multipotent stem cells? These particular stem cells can be used for replacing only a specific, or it can be made into only specific kind of, or programmed into only specific kind and not all kinds of cells. Okay. So researchers, what did they do? They reprogrammed these stem cells, okay, so that it will actually enable or replace the damaging cells of the tissues and enable the natural production of insulin, and it got injected to a person who was suffering with diabetes 1. Very simple explanation over. This is all the entire article is talking about. So, scientists have successfully used reprogrammed stem cells in order to help a type 1 diabetes patient produce insulin naturally. Understood? The next one, this was achieved by transplanting 3D islet clusters. Don't get confused with this. These are a group of cells called islets of Langerhans, and these are actually, kind of cells in your pancreas. Okay. So what they do, they transplanted this 3D islet clusters which are derived from pluripotent stem cells. I told you what are pluripotent stem cells, the kind of cells or the kind of stem cells that can be, made or developed or reprogrammed into any other kind of cells into the patient's abdominal muscles. So they injected that into the patient's abdominal muscles, as a result of which there was natural production of insulin in 3 months itself. So this actually represents that there can be longer period of insulin independence, and also there is no need for immunosuppressants, that is external administration of drugs. So this is what it is actually talking about. Now moving forward, since you understood the basics, I assume you have, let us quickly run through what is type 1 diabetes, what is autoimmune disease, etc. So that we'll be done with this quickly. So type 1 diabetes, it is a chronic condition in which body immune system mistakenly destroys the insulin producing beta cells in the pancreas, because insulin produced by beta cells located in pancreas, an organ situated below or in the, at the bottom of the stomach. So what is insulin? It is crucial for regulating the blood sugar levels, and its absence leads to higher blood sugar levels. This actually requires insulin injections for the management. What is an autoimmune disease? This is when the immune system wrongly identifies the beta cells as foreign, that is, it actually attacks them, leading to their destruction. Again, I am saying it actually leads to the destruction, disrupting the body's natural ability to control the blood sugar levels. And we saw what is an autoimmune disorder is. The immune system attacks the body's own cells, tissues or the organs, and actually mistaking them as harmful invaders. So this is what is type 1 diabetes. Now moving forward, it is important for us to, I told you there are different types of diabetes, right? That is type 1 diabetes, type 2, type 3. Then the next one is gestational diabetes. Diabetes 1 is nothing but body doesn't generate sufficient insulin for this glucose regulation, and you have different symptoms that you always feel hungry and unexpected weight loss, and then numb or tingling feeling in your hands and the feet. You have extreme fatigue, etc. And this is an autoimmune disease. And here type 2 diabetes, again it is insulin insufficiency for blood, glucose regulation. So this is also there. This is due to the lifestyle changes, and eventually there is gestational diabetes. Body is not able to produce insulin during pregnancy. Okay, and there are various complications also. What are they? Your wounds actually heal very, very slowly. There is cerebrovascular disease, diabetic, nephropathy, and coronary heart diseases are there. All these are associated with these kind of, diabetes. Now moving forward, let us understand what is stem cell therapy. We again understood it already in detail. Now we need to run through that very, very quickly. Stem cells are unique cells that have the ability to develop into different other types of cells in the body. They are of two types. One is pluripotent, next is multipotent. Pluripotent can actually become any cell type in the body, whereas multipotent has a limited range of cells. It can be developed into limited range. Next one, what do you mean by induced pluripotent? These are adult cells that have been genetically reprogrammed to behave in a certain way, capable of becoming any other kind of cell. Same thing, okay? So this is what has been done to the patient. They had reprogrammed this induced pluripotent cell and they had introduced into the body of the person or the patient, okay? For example, it has been reprogrammed in such a way that it is insulin producing beta cells. Now, how can stem cells help in reversing type 1 diabetes? Because the stem cell therapy, it actually involves using these iPS cells to regenerate or replace the damaged cells. Okay, so this is what it is actually been spoken about. Now, see, if you actually see, these are the stem cells. It can be either nerve cells, it can actually be used in any kind of brain damage or whatever it is. Next one is heart cells, next muscle cells, intestinal cells, liver cells, etc. Now moving forward, the second one. First, we actually saw how does the stem cells actually help, the role of biotechnology in reversing these kind of autoimmune diseases. First one was actually talking about the the pluripotent stem cells or stem cell therapy. Next is islet transplantation. I already told you these clusters of cells which are in the pancreas that include, the beta cells, etc., that is responsible for the production of insulin. They are called as the islets of Langerhans. Okay, what happens is that they, from a donor, are transplanted into the diabetic patient. So they are taken, healthy cells, they are actually taken from the donor and they are transplanted into a diabetic patient to restore the insulin production. Also, the development of 3D islet clusters from the induced pluripotent cells is an innovative approach, and that is actually helping us to reverse this type 1 diabetes, okay, with fewer number of complications is what the article is actually saying. Now moving forward, if you actually see, this is actually a donor. This is the pancreas that I told you, located below, behind the stomach. From there, you have the stem cells that are actually taken, and these are, the islets in the pancreas, and this is the recipient with the type 1 diabetes where it is actually given to them. Kindly excuse me for a minute where I have some, yeah. So now moving on to the next part. Next part, apart from the stem cell therapy, as well as if you see these islet of Langerhans reprogramming, we had something called as the gene reprogramming. This is nothing but it is converting the adult cells into the iPS cells, induced pluripotent cells, by introducing specific genes, okay, such that they can, in this case, they can actually produce the insulin naturally. This allows for customized therapies where a patient's own cells are reprogrammed. Your own cell is reprogrammed, reducing the risk of immune rejection, because most of the time what happens is that there is rejection if you actually receive from the donor because of blood, or your blood pressure raises and there is actually no proper matching. So that is what they are saying. In order to reduce that, this particular gene reprogramming is done to the recipient cell itself. And then this eliminates the need for immunosuppressive drugs also. And this is a technique which has a significant leap in personalized medicine in order to treat type 1 diabetes. So then again, we've actually dealt with the three methods which are used over here. So I hope that with respect to that are the three topics that we discussed here. One on logistics sector, you're very clear about the basics, what is logistics, contribution to GDP, etc., employment generation, and the examples of which, and then what are the challenges that actually face, because of which the retail as well as the e-commerce sector are suffering, etc. Now, the second topic was about the rice variety, where I told you starting from the kind of crop diversification that is there in India, the cropping patterns, what kind of Kharif, Rabi as well as Zaid grows in northern and southern India, and what are the uh, resilient crop varieties that India actually uses, and this Pusa 290, how it is actually better when compared to the previous variety of 44, how it is environmentally sustainable. We saw that in the second topic. The third topic we discussed about this transplantation, where we had spoken about what is an autoimmune disease. You read about examples of autoimmune disease. You talked about type 1 diabetes, saw the other types of diabetes as well. You learned a new concept on what is insulin. You actually discussed about where it is produced. You heard about the pancreas, islets of Langerhans, beta cells, etc. We also discussed about stem cells and how these particular stem cell technology or biotechnology plays an important role in reversing the autoimmune diseases like diabetes. Okay, so this is what it is. So in case a question actually comes somewhere which is what to say maneuvered around this topic, this is how you need to frame your answer from your understanding of the concepts. And here now coming on to Narayana IAS Academy, that you actually know so far, we have different products and successful products which is actually created by our R&D team, right from your Navigator magazine to your advanced GS books. We have curated content from everywhere, and we actually serve everything directly on your platter so that your preparation is enhanced and it becomes easier, and it is almost updated in every aspect, so that you can face question in any dimension in your examination across all the papers. And admissions are open for 2025-2026. Now moving forward, let us actually solve a couple of prelims questions as well as main questions. Let's see how you can actually handle these questions. Okay, so the question here, which of the following is not a characteristic important of Pusa 2090, a variety sometimes mentioned in the news? It is a seed to grain period. It has a seed to grain period of 120 to 125 days. I hope you actually know this. Yes, this is correct. It offers higher head rise recovery compared to that of Pusa 44. Yes, it is actually correct. It requires more irrigation. No, this is actually wrong. Okay, one of the environmental sustainability features was that it required less water for irrigation because its maturity period was lesser, right? It was 30 days in advance. Next, it's highly lodging resistant during grain filling stages. Yes, this is correct. So what is not correct is the option C. So let us actually see what your answer actually says here. Okay, so answer is not mentioned there. The answer was actually C. Now, the second question with reference to the use of stem cells in treating type 1 diabetes, consider the following. Induced pluripotent stem cells can be adult cells reprogrammed to a pluripotent state. Yes, this is correct. And stem cells therapy helps in regenerating insulin producing beta cells in patients with type 1 diabetes. Yes, correct. The next one, islet transplantation involves the direct use of stem cells to produce insulin in the body. No, here only option 1 and 2 are actually correct. So here your answer becomes A, option A. So this statement is not correct. Now moving forward, let us actually solve the mains practice question quickly. So addressing the challenges, let us actually read the question. Addressing the challenges in India's logistics sector is crucial for unlocking the potential of retail and e-commerce industry discussed in the light of India's experience. So this is actually a 10 marker. So now your approach to this particular question can be divided into 3. It can be broken down into 3 parts. One is your introduction, the body and the conclusion. Okay. So here if you see the introduction, the logistics sector, first we'll actually talk about logistics sector. Now we will let us actually complete this and move into a few of queries that are actually been asked, okay, in the live session. So here first we'll actually discuss about the logistics sector, how it is vital, for the retail and e-commerce, how much does it actually contribute respectively, and by 2030 what is the potential of growth. In the body, you need to talk about the challenges that face the logistics sector, like high logistic costs, there are infrastructure deficiencies. All this we actually spoke, right? With respect to infrastructure, there is over dependence on road transportation, there is highly fragmented warehousing, etc. So here we've actually discussed that. Now moving forward towards the conclusion, and I mean, yeah, we need to talk about again other challenges like technology gaps, skill shortages, etc. And now moving towards the conclusion, we need to say addressing these challenges are very, very important. We need proper investment in infrastructure. We need to adopt the cutting edge technologies, be it artificial intelligence as well as, the Internet of Things, etc. And we need to focus and invest on the skill development. This is actually trying to unlock the entire potential of India's retail and e-commerce sectors, because next in the few decades to come, it's going to generate around 25 million jobs in the economy, and this will result in driving the economic growth as well as job creation. Okay, so there were questions on they have said very important topic for the examination. Yes, it is very important. Is type 1 diabetes same as the one comes because of obesity? No. Sunil Kumar has actually asked. No, it is actually not the same, because I've explained. Type 1 is autoimmune, whereas type 2 is because of your quality of life. Okay, so that is what it is. Next one, autoimmune disease as well as stem cells, very well explained. Thank you so much. Moving forward, can we move across the comments? That's all. Okay. So yeah, I actually feel that we've actually had a very, very, effective discussion so far on the three topics that we've discussed. So any kind of doubts, you can actually get back to us through our Telegram channel or WhatsApp or whatever, because we think we are very, very accessible to you guys in order to sort out and to solve your doubts timely. So that's it. We are done with today's DNA analysis. So for further updates as well as more live sessions, please do like, share, as well as subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. So we'll meet you soon. Thank you and take care.